BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNet88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. All right, the first thing I would like to do is drop one announcement. We have assembled some of the uploads into a playlist on murder stories. That's what it's called, murder stories, available here in the description box here. It is dealing with some true crime cases, but we already had a playlist about serial killers. And I mean, I'd have to say that the serial killer cases are some of the most fascinating ones we cover on this channel. But I also thought, let's assemble a playlist of the ones we've done on other murder cases, and that will be available in the description box. The best way you can support this channel is only by listening, never asking for any money. All you got to do is listen. If you like what you hear, you can share it with your friends, share it on social media, share it with someone who is into true crime or any of the other subjects that we talk about here, such as the one that we're going to do today. And also, this is a subject that was suggested to us from one of our listeners here, giving a shout out to YouTube user Vic Underwood, who asked the question, how about doing UFOs in the movies, media, or books through history as a response to the open call for suggested topics? This was a topic that we're going to talk about today, UFOs and aliens, suggested by one of the listeners. Shout out to Vic one more time. If you have any topics that you would like covered on the channel, or you would just want to hear something about, please drop your suggestion in the comments section below, and we will try to get to it in the future. But I got to tell you, the comments and that you guys have been sending in with suggested topics, our list is getting pretty big, but we will try to get to as many requested topics as possible. Okay, so if we're going to be talking about UFOs, I thought that it would be very nice to do a very general discussion, a broad overview. The only other time that we've mentioned UFOs on this channel was when we did an upload on Travis Walton and Fire in the Sky back in 2018. But there were some technical things that were wrong with that one, so I had to take down the upload. It's no longer available here on YouTube, so think of this one as the restart. Talking about UFOs, unidentified flying objects, as well as alien encounters. And yes, Travis Walton was one that I was familiar with in the previous years. And today I would also like to look at some other case examples, particularly Riley Martin, someone who became more famous for being on the Howard Stern show and getting his own show on Sirius Satellite Radio, The Riley Martin Show. Riley Martin, of course, passed away in 2015. Now, you're going to find a lot of different stories going on with UFOs. And what I have to say about that is people are definitely experiencing something. These aren't just little noises that they're hearing in the night. These aren't just little orbs of light that somebody is seeing. People are having very definitive experiences. And my response to this one is quite similar to some of the things that we said during the discussions on things such as ghosts, as well as any type of spiritual encounter. Someone is actually experiencing something. And then the question is, what is it that they have experienced? So if we want to talk about Travis Walton first, Snowflake, Arizona, perhaps one of the most famous UFO cases in the United States of America, what I can say about that one is there is a very definitive timeline. Travis Walton was allegedly abducted by a UFO with multiple witnesses that saw the lights, as well as he was missing for 5 days. The timeline matched up. Multiple people could corroborate it. This has turned into a book called The Walton Experience that was then renamed Fire in the Sky, and they made a movie about it called Fire in the Sky with James Garner. Although James Garner plays one of the investigators, he doesn't play Travis Walton himself. So if anyone would like to check that out, Fire in the Sky. And you have all of these things that come into play very clearly. And not only that, Travis Walton can also recall things. He can share things and say what he experienced. Not to mention that during these 5 days, Travis Walton hadn't eaten or consumed anything, so they say. I mean, he hadn't eaten any food for 5 days, and there is one possibility that we can talk about with that in just a second. Whereas you're going to see something different when you look at a potential UFO abduction case from somebody such as Riley Martin, who had his encounter in the early 1950s. Riley Martin was born in Mississippi, but then there were some major floods that took place in the late 1940s. Riley Martin was born in 46, so his parents moved up to the northeastern Arkansas. And in the early 1950s, around 1952, I think it was, Riley Martin had his abduction, and he didn't recall any of this until the 1980s. And this is a big thing. He recalled his abduction experiences through hypnosis. And there is one story that Riley Martin tells where he says in the 1980s, the aliens, if you want to call them that, told him that he was going to remember now. Now it was time for him to remember. And this is a big differentiation between the Travis Walton case, because Travis Walton did not recall these things under hypnosis. Another very famous incident, Betty and Barney Hill. I mean, because this was a requested topic, I finally got around to watching the Lord and Arts upload on Betty and Barney Hill in that case of UFO abduction. And what they had to say about that one is Betty and Barney Hill also recalled very specific things under the use of hypnosis. So you really just have to ask the question, where really is the first-hand connection to these things? And also, how exactly were these memories originating? Because hypnosis can do some powerful things. I mean, I used to think that hypnosis had no value at all, but I mean, when you actually look at some things about how, say, for example, you have memories that you've completely forgotten, and you can, when you're under hypnosis, you can recall details about these memories. And then, say, for example, in the case of Benjamin Kyle, he forgot his social security number. So under the use of hypnosis, he was able to recall specific digits from the social security number. That's just like one example. Then you can corroborate the story, you can fact check it and find out, oh, this person actually was able to recall information under the use of hypnosis. All right, so what does that mean about people like Betty and Barney Hill as well as Riley Martin? Well, what I can say is that the Travis Walton incident is something where we should really examine, because it's one of the clearest and most detailed accounts of ufology, the study of UFOs. And what I would say about that is, number one, Travis Walton appeared on a game show called The Moment of Truth, and he was asked several questions under the use of a polygraph test. And I have one big thing to say. I put a lot more stock and weight into polygraph testing than other people do. And I should also mention that the first time that I heard about Travis Walton and Riley Martin, it wasn't on Howard Stern and it wasn't on The Moment of Truth. It was on an episode of Jerry Springer that they did about UFOs and like UFO encounters. Remember, Jerry Springer used to be like a real talk show, Jerry Springer's words, not mine, before they got into the outrageous stuff. So the other thing to say with that is they had this guy on the episode of Jerry Springer with Riley Martin and Travis Walton, and he said one of the pieces of evidence that they put forward to prove to the public that UFOs are real is the polygraph testing, especially when they pile up. And this guy, I don't even know his name. This is something that I heard years ago, maybe 11 years ago. He also said one quote that really stayed with me when he was like, maybe we don't have proof, but we have lots of evidence. We have to stay true to the term. He said that quote. I use it all the time in casual conversation. I don't even know who that guy was, but he shared that quote. Maybe we don't have proof, but we have lots of evidence. We have to stay true to the term. And I would really just like to ask that as the first challenge question. What do you think about polygraph testing? Because Travis Walton passed many of his polygraph questions on that show, The Moment of Truth, with flying colors, including one that was asked to him by the skeptic Michael Shermer, whom I don't like very much. But Michael Shermer asked him the question, do you have any evidence from your UFO abduction? And Travis Walton said, oh, there's piles of it. You're like, yes. And then that answer was deemed to be true. Now, first and foremost, think about what we just said about polygraph testing, that the polygraphs are counted as evidence. So even if he answered a single question right about anything ever on any polygraph, and Travis Walton took multiple polygraph tests, there is some debate about one of the polygraph tests that Travis Walton took. There was a possibility that he had the chance to preview the questions, and he only answered questions such as, did you see lights in the sky and such? And once again, multiple witnesses saw that in Snowflake, Arizona. They saw lights in the sky and they saw Travis disappearing. And, or they saw Travis being paralyzed, we should say. So, I mean, the moment of truth would carry onward. And the final question was, to Travis Walton, were you abducted by a UFO? And he said yes, of course. But the thing is, that answer was deemed to be false. And Travis Walton's response was, lie detectors are only right 97% of the time, and meaning that question isn't right. Now, the reason why I put a little bit more stock in lie detectors is I was actually persuaded by an individual named Steve Wilkos. Maybe you've heard of his show. They do lots of things with the lie detectors. And what he always says is, if it gives you the desired result, if it gives you the result that you want, then people are going to say, oh, the lie detector is accurate. If it gives you the result that you don't want, they're going to say, oh, the lie detector is inaccurate. And Travis Walton is doing that in a textbook way. When it gives him, it says his story is truthful, he's like, yes, the lie detector is working. When it said his story was not truthful, he said, oh, the lie detector was probably not accurate. So that is his response to that. But I should say, though, that some of the evidence that Travis Walton did provide were the Geiger counter readings. Like when Michael Shermer asked him that specific question, do you have any evidence from your UFO abduction? His response was, oh, there are piles of it. That's true. And he's like, the first example he said was not the polygraph test. That was my own contribution. He said the Geiger counter readings. Those are not things that you could hold in your hand, but Geiger counter readings were conducted on Travis Walton, measuring his radiation, and it determined that something was different or abnormal. That goes into the pile of evidence. Remember, as we said, we have lots of evidence, maybe not proof, to stay true to the terms. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about Travis Walton and a little bit about Riley Martin. And what I would like to say about this one is that with Riley Martin, he recalls some amazing things. I know he says he did some of this under hypnosis, but some of the things that he experienced in these quote-unquote hypnotic sessions, the memories that they were able to pull back, not only was he on a spaceship, but he was taken into various parts of our solar system. He says he has very vivid memories of the rings of Saturn being so close that he can see them out of the spaceship window. And not only was he abducted by aliens, but on this spacecraft, or at some point in his life, he communicated with 7 different species of aliens, or he had the knowledge that there were 7 different species of aliens that were interacting with him. And Riley Martin is the author of the book, The Coming of Tan. Tan is the alien that he truly communicated with. And the full name of Tan is Okwa Tanjin Wan. And this is all the subject of the book, The Coming of Tan. You can find it on RileyMartin.com, perhaps Amazon.com. I remember back in 2014 when I started listening to the Riley Martin show. I mean, I got so pulled into that world that I was listening to the Riley Martin show, and I pulled up the first chapter of The Coming of Tan, which is available on his website. I checked even today. It's still that you have some notes on The Coming of Tan, the latest edition, as well as the first chapter was available. And I was really quite disappointed that it didn't contribute anything that Riley Martin doesn't share in the interviews. It's really not putting out any additional information. So the next thing that we should say is that after Travis Walton, after Riley Martin, remember, Riley Martin and Betty and Barney Hill recalled their UFO stories greatly under the influence of hypnosis. Betty and Barney Hill also recalled things without hypnosis, but hypnosis was used. What do you make of that? I would also like to go on to something now from the now deplatformed YouTuber Stefan Molyneux. Now, Stefan Molyneux had a lot of controversial things to say, and it wasn't really until 2019 that I ever really explored any of his controversial material. Back in 2018, I found his videos. I used to hear some of his libertarian debates, and then I heard some of the things that he did during his show where he talked about things like the flat earth theory, UFOs, evolution, and various subjects. I had this playlist next to my bed, and I use audio to go to sleep. Every night I would play a different video to fall asleep, like using audio. One of them was on UFOs. And I'll never forget that one of the things that he was sharing, something else that I use in conversation all the time, was he's talking to this guy about firsthand UFO encounters. A man is sharing his own personal UFO experience. He says that he saw something in the sky that moved beyond any speed that human technology could create. It was definitely mechanical, and it was moving so fast that no, we don't have human technology that could produce an object like that. It hasn't been invented yet. And Stefan Molyneux's response to that was, okay, so you don't know what you saw, and your answer is something that you aren't certain of whether it exists or not. You don't know what you saw, and you don't know if your explanation exists or not, meaning that you don't know what technology it is, and your answer is that it was something that must originate from aliens. Therefore, you're using the unknown to prove the unknown. You're using the unknown to prove the unknown. That is something that has also stayed with me when I've been investigating some of these things, and you just really begin to think about that. In addition, I would like to share something from Bill Nye. Yes, indeed. Bill Nye, the science guy. He was involved in a debate, I believe it was on CNN of all things, that they were talking about UFOs. Bill Nye was, of course, playing the skeptic card, debating somebody who had his own firsthand encounters with UFO experiences. And Bill Nye was trying to say something similar, and one of the things that he put forward was, most of the time with UFO cases, you will hear people say things that a friend told them, or they're a secondhand story, and the person that he was debating, to that man's credit, who wasn't a very likable individual, but to his credit, he was like, this is my firsthand experience. This is what I have seen with my own eyes. And you also have people such as William Cooper, for example, the author of Behold a Pale Horse, who also says that not only did he see something moving very fast in the sky, and then you could be like, all right, well, you don't know what you saw, and your explanation is something that that's existence you're uncertain of. No, he's saying that he very definitively saw a UFO when he was working with the Navy and the government was censoring this stuff. William Cooper also spent $27,000 of his own money mailing documents around the world, trying to share the truth to people, so he claims. And you can see that people are definitely experiencing something, and this is not only coming from somebody like William Cooper, ex-military. Also, Senator Mike Gravel, the senator who has run for president a couple times, he was a very adamant promoter of these claims involving UFOs. The government is censoring knowledge, all of these things. And we had a video come out rather recently. I first heard about it when I was listening to the podcast Yang Speaks a couple months ago, and they were talking about the UFO video that had come out in the summer of 2020, late spring or early summer of 2020. And when you look at that one, once again, it looks like what I would believe that a UFO would be looking like. But I think that Riley Martin even wrote in The Coming of Tan. I was just glancing at that book earlier today. As I said, some of that is available on RileyMartin.com. And he said that he was abducted by an alien spaceship or flying saucer. And I was like, alien spaceship or flying saucer? And when you think about that, you know, a lot of the descriptions, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the traditional flying saucer shape. And because this is a general overview, I mean, I'm giving credit to Riley Martin. I really am, with that statement being very clear. But because this is a general overview, I would like to talk about that because there's this individual from Switzerland. He's an artist with one arm. His name is Billy Meyer. He's the guy that takes photos of hanging trash can lids and says, hey, look, an alien. I can talk to the aliens. They can communicate with me. And he develops somewhat of a cult following. And when I say he takes photos of trash can lids, it's much more like he takes photos of sculptures that he has made. You imagine a trash can lid with a couple different layers on top that's been painted, and he takes photos of these things, and then he says he can communicate with aliens. And then he's developed somewhat of a following. It's kind of like how Peter Parker would always say that he can get these excellent photos of Spider-Man. Well, what's going on there? I do not like Billy Meyer. I mean, like I've said some favorable things about Riley Martin. I've even said some things that are somewhat open to Travis Walton, because this is one of the things about Travis Walton. Other than a few very specific examples, I don't dislike the guy. I just feel that he uses certain manipulative tactics. And even if you get a chance to watch Travis Walton on the Moment of Truth, I mean, I'm not a body language person. I'm not a body language expert. I don't put a lot of stock in that. I put more stock in polygraph tests than I do in body language testing, but it almost feels like Travis Walton is trying to fool you with his body language. He'll act really nervous and then he'll become very confident all of a sudden. That's just my 2 cents, just a very simple observation. But no, I do not have much respect at all for Billy Meyer. Do I believe that the government would hide secrets if they had things on UFOs? Yes, absolutely. They hide secrets on everything. I didn't start out in life as a conspiracy theorist. It just happened that way because the government lies to us about everything. This would be no exception. So what I can say about UFOs is the stories are very questionable. And I think that it becomes a little bit more questionable when people have to recall these details under hypnosis. And let's be very clear. The explanation that has been provided by somebody who has a first-hand connection to Travis Walton is they needed to do something to draw attention to Snowflake, Arizona, for a variety of reasons. We won't get into that, but where Travis Walton was for his 5 days was hiding out at somebody's house, smoking marijuana the whole time, and that's how he avoided the cravings and urges to eat any food. And this was written not by the person who was with him, but by that man's nephew. This guy's writing on a blog. I don't even remember his name. I read this stuff years ago. And what he was saying was, Travis Walton was hiding out at my uncle's house, smoking marijuana for 5 days, and that is how he disappeared. That's the solution to his UFO story from the 1970s. Riley Martin, of course, would, I should say very clearly, Riley Martin was missing for 3 days. He was found unharmed, and he was found nourished. The details are all over the map, but what do you think about UFOs? If there are any other things you would like to hear about with UFOs, if there are any other challenge questions that you would like to ask about UFOs, very general discussion, but that was the intention, and I would love to hear your comments and suggested topics in the comment section below. If you have any other cases that you would like covered on this channel, any subject is fair game, please drop something in the comment section below. And please visit our playlist on murder stories and murder cases. All right, well, that's all for me now. If you like this upload, you can hit the like button. It really helps out the channel. And see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.